more of your phone calls. Update our poll results for Hour 2. Coming up, we'll play the Who Will Be the Comeback Player of the Year in the NFL. I've got the odds. We'll have that for you coming up. Albert Breer, the Monday Morning Quarterback, senior NFL reporter. Man, do I have some topics for you, Albert. Let me take away your Ohio State allegiance. And Urban Meyer came out on a podcast and said that Jim Harbaugh should be suspended, similar to what happened with Jim Tressel at Ohio State when he went to the Colts working in their video replay department. Your thoughts?
I thought it was dumb at the time to suspend Tressel, so I don't know that I would support suspension of Harbaugh either. At the same time, I can remember why they did it, and if you remember, it was because they suspended Terrell Pryor. And what they were trying to do, what the NFL was trying to do, was they didn't want the pros to be a safe haven for guys to escape punishment from the NCAA. So Terrell Pryor was going to be suspended by the NCAA. So the league said, no, this can't be, an escape for you. So we're going to levy a suspension on you the way the NCAA would have coming into the league because he was going into the supplemental draft. And then when Tressel took the job with the Colts, people were like, well, wait a minute, like you forced the player to serve the suspension. So now why aren't you doing it to the coach? So I think it became one of those finger in the wind type things for the league where they heard the criticism and said, okay, like, well, we'll give the coach a suspension too, maybe not thinking about the precedent they were setting. The interesting thing is, though, I think we have had coaches in the past that have run away from the college game to the pros as a method of trying to escape punishment, right? Like we've seen that in the past. I think you could argue like that was Pete Carroll. Now, I think Pete would probably argue that, but a lot of people felt that way when he did it. Dennis Erickson, I think, leaving Miami was sort of that way, right? Neither of these guys, I think in neither case that's what this was. Like Jim Tressel, I think would have been happy dying on the job at Ohio State. Like I think he would have done that as long as he could. He wasn't escaping to the NFL. And I don't think Harbaugh was escaping Michigan to go to the NFL either. I think he was going to the NFL regardless. In fact, I think if he had gone to the NFL, if the Vikings had offered him the job 2 years earlier when Kevin O'Connell took it, I think he would have left Michigan 2 years earlier than he did. So I don't think in either the Tressel case or the Harbaugh case, it was a guy trying to escape penalty and finding safe harbor in the NFL. There were different motivations for it.
Eric Dickerson was on a radio show, Fred Rogan and Rodney Peete on AM 570, and had this to say about Shedeur Sanders.
And I'll tell you this much here, what I heard from someone that's in the NFL, that the NFL told other, don't draft him, do not draft him. We're gonna make an example out of him. And this came from a very good source, And he said that, I won't say who, somebody called the Cleveland Browns and said, don't do that. Draft
really?
him. Yep, draft him. Don't do that. Because they weren't going to draft him either. They weren't going to draft him.
Your thoughts, Albert?
Yeah, I always think these sorts of conspiracies are a little overdone. I don't think there was any conspiracy here. I think it's relatively simple what happened. I think the great majority of NFL teams did not view him as a first-round prospect, contrary to what had been out there for the year previous. And then I think what happens is once you get past the first round, you look at the history over the years, not a lot of quarterbacks go in the second or third rounds. It's just the reality of it, like that most teams look at it like if there's a guy who's going to be our long-term answer at the position, we just take him in the first round. And if a guy's not going to be your long-term answer at the position, then you probably aren't going to take him in the second or third round because you're going to be looking for a long-term answer at another position with those picks. So the fate of Shedeur Sanders, I think he fell out of the first round for football reasons. I think he kept falling for everything else, right? Like for the fact that most coaches look at their backup quarterbacks and say, I want you to blend in with the furniture. I don't want to notice that you're even here. That's the way, for better or worse, most teams approach the quarterback position, which I think to some degree short-circuited the careers of guys like Tim Tebow and Colin Kaepernick. So Shedeur's case was complicated going into the draft, but I don't think it was that complicated where there was some sort of weird conspiracy to keep him out of the league.
Yeah, from what I was told by a source, he didn't interview well. He kind of came in and he was interviewing teams instead of the other way around.
Right.
And you're right, he didn't have first-round talent. There was nothing exceptional about him except for maybe his toughness and his pedigree. But I can't imagine all of these owners getting together and somebody saying, hey, everybody, listen, don't draft Shedeur Sanders. Do I think the Browns – yeah,
especially when there's somebody with the bullhorn that Dion has on the other side of it. You know what I mean? That seems like ridiculous that seems like the wrong tree to bark up, doesn't it, Dan?
Yeah, it does. We're talking to Albert Breer, the Monday morning quarterback. I saw where the U.S. ambassador to the United Kingdom is lobbying for London to get the Super Bowl at some point. This comes up occasionally.
Yep.
I do think we're headed towards this. I don't know if it's 10 years from now, but I think the NFL can take the heat because you're still going to tune into the Super Bowl. Where do you land on this story?
I agree that I think eventually it will happen. I think the biggest hurdle now is the television rating is such a big deal. And the NFL really does care about 70 million versus 80 million versus 100 million versus 120 million. And if you really care about that, your kickoff time does matter, you know? And so if you're holding the game in London, if it's at, what would it be? If it was at 8 o'clock.
11:25?
Oh, right, like, no, but if it was
local.
at 8 o'clock local, then that's 3 o'clock Eastern. And you can say it's the Super Bowl. Yeah, like everybody's going to sit down and watch it. But is that really true? I mean, the Super Bowl is a unique one because it is so dependent on the drive-by viewer. You know, that number going from in the playoffs like 50 million to 120 million, that's not based on people like me and you, Dan, tuning in. You know what I mean? Like we're there regardless. That's based on people who could take it or leave it, who I like quite literally could say like, no, I go out for my walk. Or I go out for a hike on Sunday afternoon. So if the game's on at 7, I'm going to watch it. But if it's on at 3, I'm not. So I think that's the one hurdle is like the television number, the advertising rates, all of that different stuff, like the communal aspect of the Super Bowl. But I think they would love to do it, because I do think growing internationally is a huge priority of Roger Goodell's. It's a huge priority of the league offices. It's a huge priority for a lot of owners. And I think what they've figured out over the years, there's a reason why they don't put preseason games over there anymore, right? Like they used to do that. Remember the Tokyo Bowl back in the day? They used to do that. And the reason they don't do that, the reason they pulled NFL Europe is they felt like those things don't make a dent. Like you got to send them the real thing, which I think is why they feel like now they're starting to make a dent because they're sending the real thing overseas. And of course, there'd be nothing more impactful than putting the Super Bowl in another country.
What about a Saturday night Super Bowl in London? And you started a little bit later.
Okay. So what you're saying, like the Londoners got to put up with a 10 p.m. kickoff or something?
No, let's say kickoff is at 9.
So it's 4 in the U.S.
Yeah.
But now you're talking about a Saturday rating versus a Sunday rating. You know more about this than I do, but isn't Sunday a much better ratings day than Saturday?
Yeah, but it's the Super Bowl, and you get to
It is a Super Bowl, but what I'm saying,
you get
Dan,
to get
is
up
that,
on
like,
Sunday, though. You don't have to worry about Monday.
Right, but like what I'm saying is that the Super Bowl is so dependent on that rating is so dependent on people who could take it or leave it. You know what I mean? That rating going through the roof, is based on so many people that don't normally watch sitting down and watching with everybody else. And do you lose that take it or leave it viewer if you're putting it at a less opportune time? I think that's the sort of question. I don't know. Like maybe you don't, but I think that's the sort of question that will get batted around.
Did the Colts fail Anthony Richardson?
No, I think they gave him plenty of chances to seize this and to take it and to run with it. And I think.
But it's on them that they drafted him. He's a project. He's a project.
It is 100% on them that they got this wrong, right? Like that they got the draft pick wrong 1,000,000%. That's on them. I think part of it is what happens when you predetermine in a certain year we're taking a quarterback regardless of who's there, right? Like I think if you remember the way the year before went, Dan, like how they went to from Matt Ryan to eventually went to Sam Ellinger, and like the owner had put a lot of pressure. God rest his soul, had put a lot of pressure on a lot of people. Like we need to stop cycling through, and they had been through that whole period of, Luck to Brissett to Rivers to Wentz to Ryan, and it's like we need to stop this. We need to get a long-term answer. So you predetermine we're going to take one high in the first round. Well, what happens when Bryce Young goes 1, CJ Stroud goes 2, and there's nobody worth taking 4th overall, and you force it? Like that's how Christian Ponder goes 12th overall, right? Yeah. So like I think that's the cautionary tale here. I don't think he was ever worth the fourth overall pick. I think a lot of teams. I think if you'd ask most teams, they would tell you that if they were honest about it. And I think this is a case of, coaches in his 3rd year, where he hasn't made the playoffs yet. A GM's in his 9th year, and they can't throw another year overboard in the name of quarterback development. Last year, this is an interesting stat. Last year, they were 29th in total defense. They were 30th in giveaways. They feel like the defensive thing's been being solved by bringing in Lou Anarumo and signing guys like Cam Bynum and Jarvarius Ward. Now you got to take care of the giveaway thing, and they still won 8 games despite all of that last year, right? Mm-hmm. You do that by being more efficient on offense. You do that by keeping the train on the tracks on offense and staying out of long yardage. And to me, that hit that Anthony Richardson took that he got hurt on, I mean, no one wanted to see the result, but that was indicative of everything. Like his awareness, his ability to process everything in front of him, it's still not there 3 years in. The progress that they need to see isn't there. And so, it's for the coach, for the GM who are fighting for the job, and also for the other 10 guys in the huddle who probably are like, enough of this, like your Jonathan Taylors, your Alec Pierces, your Michael Pittmans. Like, is it fair to them to say, no, we're going to sink another year into quarterback development? I think that's where the Colts are at right now. They just have to give everyone in the organization a better answer at the position.
Yeah, but it's malpractice to put him out there his rookie year, first game. That he wasn't ready for that. He was barely ready for Florida, let alone getting to the Colts. Before I let you go, the holdouts, any updates on McLaurin and Hendrickson?
Yeah, I think Hendrickson's going to be really hard to trade. The offer, I think people would be surprised to see the raw number, like how far the Bengals have gone, just as far as the average per year. I don't think they're at where, Watt and Garrett are, but they're not very far off. The future guarantees are the issue, and like how willing the Bengals are to bend there. I think pride's come into it because it's been 3 straight off seasons for Trey Hendrickson. He's been in this position. I think the Bengals, to get Trey Hendrickson signed, need to make this feel like a win for Trey. And I can't imagine. I mean, the Bengals have been listening the whole time. They want a high pick, they want an active player, and they want, and Trey's got to get his contract, which is a lot to give up for a 31-year-old if you're another team, which is why I don't think there will be a trade partner. As for Terry, I think that that's one of those where I think we get like to the doorstep of the season and everybody puts their cards on the table. And I just think, and this is just me talking, I think Terry is too important to what Dan Quinn has built there over the last 18 months. And winning with the Commanders and being a one-team guy is too important to Terry for them not to find some middle ground. But it does feel like at this point they need a deadline to push them there. And I think there's going to have to be a point, too, for the Commanders where they're going to have to look at it and say, you know what, our data might tell us this, that like it's tough to sign a receiver of that age to this sort of guarantee. I think they're going to have to bend a little bit and say, like, this is a special case because of what he means to our franchise.
And I've stayed away from the Micah Parsons until there was a trade offer or I really felt like he was going to be traded, or because I think this is inevitable. Is there any update on Micah Parsons?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little different. I think like the one difference, and so I'll give you the similarities between this and the last few. The pace of the negotiation with this one and CD Lamb and Dak Prescott and Zach Martin is the same. Yeah. And it almost feels like Jerry has taken this and said early in the offseason, you want to take our offer, fine. If not, we'll see you in 4 or 5 months, and the pacing of these negotiations seems to go this way. It's hard to totally dismiss the idea that this helps the Cowboys get in the A block on first take. You know what I mean? Like for the entire summer. That's why those deals got done. So, those deals got done so close to the beginning of the season that it's tough to rule anything out. Now, the difference is Dak Prescott was wildly popular in the building. CD Lamb, Zach Martin, wildly popular in the building. I don't know that it's the same way with Micah, and that may complicate things a little bit. And Micah's also a free thinker, and so I think the Cowboys are going to probably put their best offer on the table, at some point in the 2 weeks between now and the opener, and we'll see if he takes it. But I think it would take probably around $45 million a year to get it done now.
Oh, 45.
Yeah.
So it's
again, part of it's like making the player feel like he's a winner after putting him through all of this. So I think that's where you're at.
Great to talk to you. Thanks as always. Right. Safe travels.
Thanks, Dan. And we got a favor to ask of you that I think you'll enjoy a little bit. Fantasy football related. So look out for that one.
Oh, no. Hopefully you don't want advice.
No. In fact, like I get my friends always ask me for advice, and I tell them they're asking the wrong person. So I'm with you on that.
You can ask me now if you want to.
Okay. So a couple of my friends, we went through, because I'm the connection to everything for them, and we went through some sportscasters that we all grew up watching, and they picked you as the guy they would like to randomly select the draft order for us.
All right.
The twist is that there are some inappropriate names that may still be around from 20 years ago when we were all just out of college and naming our teams things that I think one of my friends said he'd die laughing if he heard you announce some of these names. So we'll see if we can get that
but
done.
It can't be made public though.
Well, I promised that. I already promised that. 100%.
Because like Cameo,
you have my promise. It will be destroyed after everybody gets a chance to see it.
Because Cameo, you'll have leagues that reach out and say, "Would you do our draft?" And there's some suspect names on there, team names, and I said, you can't make it public, but I'll do it for the 10 people in the room. But yeah, I'll be more than happy to do that.
All right. Thanks, DP. I appreciate it. They'll be pumped.
That's Albert Breer, the Monday morning quarterback. We'll take a break. When we come back, the Comeback Player of the Year odds are out. And there's a couple of names that are pretty interesting here on the list. We'll have that for you and more of your phone calls as well after this.